Welcome to Travel 114, Group Travel Management. Today we will be talking about cruise groups. There are several advantages to organizing a cruise group. First, they are relatively easy to book and manage. You generally deal only with a cruise line, not multiple suppliers or vendors. In addition, cruise lines usually have dedicated group departments to help you, and sometimes an individual will be assigned to answer questions and help manage your group. Cruise lines can also help promote your group. While on the cruise, individual members of the group can make individual choices about what they want to do rather than always staying with the group. Cruise groups usually have some amenities and perks associated with them, which will add value. We'll explore this in more detail later in the presentation. There are some potential disadvantages when booking cruise groups, but they should not deter you. Because a ship doesn't have as much meeting space as a hotel, it may not be able to accommodate extensive requirements for meetings or other special activities. Sometimes booking space very early will mean that later promotional pricing may beat your group price, but if you emphasize your added value, price will not be as much of an issue. Finally, for very popular cruises or peak times, group space may be limited. What constitutes a group for a cruise? The magic number is often 16 full fare passengers, but some cruise lines or sailings will require only 10 full fare passengers to qualify as a group. The TC credit, tour conductor, is something offered to groups. Typically, the 16th full fare passenger will sail free, not including taxes and fees. But again, this may be lower for some cruise lines or for sailings that the cruise line wants to fill. Note that this is a credit that may be used for various purposes, not just for a free berth. And if you have booked various categories of staterooms at different prices, the value of the TC credit will probably be an average of the staterooms you have sold. Here are some basics you should know about booking cruise groups. You'll start by setting up a block of staterooms for your group. You can include multiple categories, and each category will have a different price. Many cruise lines will have dedicated group departments to help you book and manage your group. When you book your group space, you'll be informed about deposit deadlines and amounts, which will vary according to cruise line. You should be keenly aware of recall dates, which are deadlines set by the cruise line when they will take back a percentage of staterooms that have not been deposited. Sometimes you can get an extension if the cruise is not filling up. Here's a tip. Make your deposit amounts larger than required by the cruise line. That way you can hold more staterooms for a longer period of time. Also, for groups, the schedule for providing names and making final payments will vary from individual bookings and will also vary by cruise line. It's important to provide added value for your group so that you don't have to compete as much on price. If your group is getting something they can't get anywhere else, then price won't be as much of an issue. For spec cruises, however, price may be more of an issue. How do you add value? Well, use your gap points creatively. Use them to provide attractive perks for your passengers. Wine in the cabins, a group cocktail party, shipboard credits, or other amenities. And don't forget that affinity groups have intrinsic value. Where else can they travel with family, friends, colleagues, or individuals that have shared interest? Also, don't underestimate that you are also an added value, especially if you are traveling with your group. Now that you've booked your group space, what are some ways you can promote your group? A Pied Piper can generate enthusiasm, especially for an affinity group, and you can incentivize him or her with a TC credit or other perks. Also, make sure you get to know and enlist the help of your BDM or DSM. According to Betsy, this is your best resource for information on selling groups and promotional support. Check out your resources for co-op funds, which involves monetary help with marketing pieces and promotional activities. You may solicit help from your BDM, host agency, or consortium. Also, think about hosting regular webinars that provide helpful information and incite enthusiasm about your group, especially if you have guest participants, such as your cruise line sales manager Pied Piper, or other enthusiastic guest. For locals, host in-person cruise nights and make them fun. Have videos and promotional material, do some giveaways. You can ask your BDM for some small prizes, and of course, provide food and drink. For larger groups, it's a good idea to create a special website and Facebook page for your group. Utilize other social media if it's appropriate. You can launch an email campaign. Remember to target your audience and make it as personal as possible. If it's an infinity group that has a particular niche, you can take out an ad in a relevant publication or link to the website of a strategic alliance partner. And don't underestimate the power of word of mouth. Talk to everyone you know and encourage them to spread the word. Lynn Rudin, in her interview, said that word of mouth was one of the most successful avenues for promoting her jazz cruise. What do you need to keep in mind for a successful group cruise? First, start planning early, at least 12 to 18 months out. Get to know your BDM or DSM and enlist his or her help. Try to see the ship, if possible. Make sure you are very familiar with the cruise line's terms and conditions and any deadlines and rules. Also, make sure your passengers have these T's and C's in writing. Publish any deadlines and terms of your own, such as special cancellation policies or special payment deadlines. Always encourage purchasing trip insurance and make sure that encouragement is in writing. It's a good idea to create an FAQ page for your passengers and publish it on your special website, and include it with any receipts for deposits and other mailings. Bottom line, Lynn says you can never be too organized, and I think that's a point that would have general agreement. To help keep track of the details, employ a CRM or other technology tool. You should keep track of individual payments, special needs and requests, preferences, and other important data, and always set your payment deadlines earlier than the cruise line deadlines. This will give you a cushion and will help minimize stress. Finally, always follow up after the cruise. If possible, have your next group ready to book while your group is traveling and enthusiasm is at its height. Host a get-together after the cruise to share stories and photos. Post photos of the cruise to your Facebook group page or web page or other social media and encourage others to do the same. Make sure you send a personal, handwritten thank you note to individual passengers. Do a survey to gather information about what worked and what they would like to see in the next cruise. And keep in touch. Groups usually generate additional business. Cultivate those relationships.